Hi, Joyce Erb, guest designer for Cut at Home, where I'll be showing you some different crafting tips for people with hand challenges, as well as other tips and techniques for everyone. This is the card that inspired my project for today. It's a thank you card. It's masculine. It was the last masculine card I had in my stash, and my daughter had it all ready to send, and my 4-year-old granddaughter got a hold of it with the gel pens. And so I told her I'd make her another one. And while I was at it, I'd do a few. Then I came up with an idea of how maybe I could save it. So I've got this stencil. It's a splatter from the Tim Holtz collection. And I thought I could cover it up. Make it look like it was done on purpose. So I'm going to emboss the card base using the Vagabond, and I use the base plate, the Solo Thin, the Solo Thin die adapter with the bottom cutting plate. And I put the entire card base in the folder because I didn't want to make a separate layer. And it looks fine. The whole thing's embossed, but that's fine with me. This one obviously is already done. I'm just showing you how you put it in the folder. And then you put the top plate on it and then run it through the Vagabond. For the sentiment, we'll be using Heartfelt Wishes from Heartfelt Creations, the thank you sentiment. And to distress the edges of my designer paper, I've got a piece cut for the top and for the bottom. I use a Zutter Distress It All. And what I did here is I'm bracing it against that box, which is moving on me because my index finger there is pushing a button. You have to actually push and hold the button. Now, in my cutting station, which is to my right, I actually have something stationary that I lean this against so it doesn't move on me. But I put the paper over the little cutting blade, and I wiggle it back and forth. I do it to the front and back until I get the edges distressed the way I want it to be. And I'm only distressing the bottom of this piece and the bottom of the striped accent piece. Now I'm distressing all the edges with the vintage photo ink, and I just sponge it on the bottom, front, back edges until I get the darkness that I want. I will go around the edges a little bit, the top and sides. Not too much because this paper actually has some shading built right into it. I put the top piece in the corner of my positioner upside down so that the frayed bottom edge didn't interfere with my alignment. And I use the anti-static tool to remove any static, seeing I'm going to be using embossing powder. So I position the stamp in the center, and I remembered to put the stamp upside down. And then I use the grid to check and make sure that my stamp is straight. I apologize, I'm off screen a little bit here. This is the Versamark, and I ink it real well. And then press it on. Now, I use my elbow just because my fingers really don't press well, but it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure. So just on a positioner, you just push down. I'm checking to make sure I have good coverage, and I do. So I will be using Tim Holtz Distress Embossing Powder, the color Walnut. And I haven't used this type of embossing powder very, very often. So when I go to heat it, I can't really tell if it was melted because it's not as shiny. And so I touched it and see the N and the K. It wasn't melted in that area and I smeared it. But I don't have to throw it away. I don't have to start over. See how I still have the stamp on the positioner, I didn't move it. That means I'll be able to put the card back in the same position, wedged in the corner, and I'll be able to restamp it. That's why I want the straight edge in case I had to do something like this. So I re-ink it with the Versamark, restamp, I don't edit out all mistakes because we all make mistakes. I'd rather show how to fix mistakes than pretend they didn't happen. I will emboss this with the heat gun off camera. Next week, I think I'll move my gun so I can actually emboss on camera. So I got good coverage. And this is it with melted. Still looks a little grungy, but that's okay. It's a masculine card. Okay, we'll work with a stencil now. You can see I've got several bases ready to go here. I took my iridescent Pebeo. I believe the color is copper. I think the number is 350. I'll have the link on my Paper Finesse blog for the media that I use. So I'm just positioning, I'm trying to get that bottom splatter, kind of like that. And also the top, looks like coffee cup ring, coffee mark. And I'm just dabbing it lightly through the holes. And this is just an inexpensive sponge applicator you can get from hardware stores or the dollar store. And I wasn't sure if this ink would come off of it because this ink is pretty hard to get off my hands, but it washed out great with just warm water. To get it off my hands, I will find a link to the scrubber that I use. It's actually a special craft scrubber that gets different inks and stuff off of your hands, and it works really well. This stuff sticks to my nails and it's really tough to get off. In fact, it won't come off that stencil because I didn't wash it immediately. But as long as it's dry, it's not a problem. As long as it's not dry, but as long as it's flat and there's no ridges, it won't hurt your stencil. I get about half of it off when I wash it. Now, if you wash it immediately, it will come off. So I'm just dabbing this paint through the stencil in random locations. What the heck, I'll just freeform some splats here. There you go, it's just a subtle, the color's not real dominant, it's just a subtle, messy look. Then it'll go on the top portion of my card. Now we'll fix the card that has the writing on it. So what I'm doing here is I'm flipping it over to make sure no paint got on the back because I didn't want to get any on the existing sentiment. And I'm positioning one of the splats over the biggest doodle. The green gel doodle just didn't go. But in fairness to my granddaughter, this was left on her desk area. So I'm just dabbing a little bit over the two green spots. Then I'll just randomly use the stencil and make this look similar to the other ones. I hope you got some ideas of how to make a pretty quick and easy set of masculine cards. Each one has a random design. All that's left now is to add the twine to each card. You can easily change up the design on these by changing the papers. The links for the stencil and stamp used today will be at the Cut at Home blog. I hope you enjoyed the project today, and I hope to see you next week.